You haven't.
Henry, there's nobody stuck outside right now, is there? Okay.
Exclusive lecture. Totally nice.
I know Sophia Nanchini was gonna be trying to come in from Eisner, so did orchestra practice and stuff or whatever, right?
That's like one of the best
Or-
ones to play.
Yeah, trying to get here for park orchestra. Tori made it, awesome.
Tori Snow.
Yeah.
Whoa, dude, it's a sign.
It's a big reunion.
I just wanted to get some letters out.
I'm gonna kick her out.
I guess I get to start, I get to decide when I start from next too, right? So, yeah. It might be the one lecture that nobody like packs up and tries to leave before I'm done.
We'll see about that.
Yes, you know. That's before you've heard what I had to say, right? I better keep it just right for Lucas, otherwise it's gonna pack up and walk right out. I will say that the one thing that's gonna be weird about today is it's probably the one time I've actually written out what I was gonna say, simply because. Why is everyone laughing? Do you know me that well? But yeah, nervous and wanted to get it right, so I wrote it down. Which is kind of weird, right? Like, you think I want to get it right for a lecture, but. You get me talking about organic chemistry, and it's just fine. I mean, it's part of the routine, so. Yeah. Well, a few more people trickle in. It's the last day of class here, so you know, right? We got no agenda tonight. Good to have you guys too. Hey, Sophia made it. All right. And long haul from Eisner. All right. Well, I guess we can probably get started. And there's quite a few people on Zoom now and on Facebook, including some of my family. They're here to watch this tonight. So, all right. Well. Well, here we are. To be honest, I'm not really sure how to start this, let alone how to end this. 14 years, I've been the luckiest man alive to have the privilege to be a chemistry professor. However, I think I can safely say today that as far as I can peer into the future, to paraphrase Chief Joseph, I will lecture no more forever. I will probably be a teacher in some capacity or another because that's just who I am. And that's what I do. But I am closing the chapter on being directly involved in higher education. So for tonight, I thought, let's talk a little bit about how did I get here. Both my parents were involved in education. My mom was elementary education and music as well. My dad was started in elementary education and spent the bulk of his career as a high school guidance counselor, no less. That meant you didn't screw off in school too much. You don't want to go talk to your dad. It's a tough life, I'm telling you. The one thing I did learn from my parents and observing them was I never wanted to teach. Teaching seemed to be the most time-consuming job and often the most thankless job. I don't know that I've been proven wrong about that over the years, but I was pretty sure that I never wanted to teach. I also never really saw myself as smart enough. I was fine, but I never see myself as smart enough. I did well enough though, and by the time I was heading off to college, I had decided to become a chemical engineer based on the suggestion of a high school teacher at the time. So, I always enjoyed chemistry more than the other sciences, and certainly more than math. That's a joke for everybody who's had me in class. You know that the principle of organic chemistry is you don't have to do any math. You know, that's why we do organic chemistry. There's a mathematician somewhere cringing at that statement, but that's okay. I did have a curiosity for chemistry growing up. There was always times in my youth where we were messing around trying to make a firework, or maybe it was an explosive or some kind of a little bit of pyromania in my background. Partially because we never bought any fireworks. So you can't buy the fireworks and just make your own, right? And so we had fertilizer and we had gasoline, and what could be better? And so there were a lot of very poorly designed and failed experiments over the years of trying to create my own fireworks. That's probably where the curiosity started. And then there was this time in high school when they taught us about the electrolysis of water. This is fantastic. So I went home, and I think it might have been ammonium sulfate fertilizer and a battery. And I hooked that up and was doing, and a rusty nail probably too, who knows? I had stuff. And I'm sitting in the barn, in the shop of the barn, and I'm sitting here trying my own chemistry experiment. And all I can tell you is what I did learn from that experiment was that electrolysis did allow me to create a brilliant blue solution. And listen, in those days, nobody cared that you made a blue solution in your garage. Freaking bad, Rich. I don't know, anyway, so note to self, I always have to explain my jokes. Anyway, so long-standing history there. In my first year of college then, I was trying to pursue chemical engineering. I took general chemistry, general physics, and Calc 1, 2, and 3. That was pretty much my first year. I probably took a gen ed, but who remembers any of that? That was funny too. Laugh now. Especially those who are graduating. Again, in a class like that, I could always identify all the students who were smarter than me. I could figure out the ones who did better than me, or as far as I could perceive it, found the material much easier than I found it. At the same time, despite being an avid reader growing up, I started reading at a rather young age and was reading chapter books at a fairly young age. And so I always was reading, but well, especially in college, I found out that reading a textbook was nearly impossible. I tell you that now, right? I could never read a textbook because I would always fall asleep. Actually, larger books, and I tried to read a lot of Charles Dickens novels, and I could get a couple of pages in and fall asleep, or I'd read something and forget what I read, and that was before anybody was diagnosed with ADD and sent off to the ARC or something like that. And no, I didn't get extended time for my exams, but I'm not bitter. I'm really not bitter at all. That was a nervous laughter, wasn't it? Oh, man. That's why you're here tonight, right? Just to see what I might say. Anyways, I could not read a textbook without falling asleep. And yet, then a professor approached me and asked me to consider doing summer research. And I was a little bit surprised by that. And I figured at first it was probably just simply because my older brother had done the summer research experience previously. And so they just, by default assumed I might go too. But in retrospect, I kind of almost thought it was an academic mulligan, in the sense that because of the kind of schedule that I took in my freshman year, I was like, this is crazy. Maybe we ought to put them into research. I have to probably, I did get all A's except for maybe a B or two here and there with that, even with that schedule. In case somebody ever really wanted to know how I did in college. Yeah. I did spend the summer then doing research at Wheaton College. And there's going to be a really weird theme coming along here pretty soon. The research was really, really fascinating because it involved taking vanillin, which is the chemical component responsible for the flavor of milk, and converting it in to a molecule that was similar to morphine or codeine. And that would be a cheaper alternative to morphine and codeine, if anybody really needed a cheaper alternative to an opioid. But that was long before anybody was really that concerned about opioid addictions. But it was fascinating nonetheless that, wow, you could take just a benign compound like vanillin and turn it into something that, in my mind, was a benefit, driving down the cost of healthcare. I probably could talk about too, as a kid in school, like every other kid, was pretty sure I was going to find a cure for cancer. That was ironic, as you'll find out in a little bit. But with that experience, I was hooked on chemistry. Okay, wait, now that might have been a poor choice of words. I'll work this out eventually. But I did slowly realize in that process that chemical engineering was not my thing. That was not what I was passionate about. It's not what I really wanted to do. And instead, graduate studies in organic chemistry was what I wanted to do. Then there was this time, as an undergraduate, while taking organic chemistry, that I got asked to tutor 3 other students in the class at the time who were needing some extra help. And I'll help somebody else with organic chemistry. And I was actually kind of honored that they chose me. And so it was a great experience because not only did it help me understand the material more deeply as I tried to explain the concepts to them in a way that I understood, but at the same time, I was so enthralled by the fact that all 3 of the students that I worked with all improved their grade by at least a letter grade, and I'm pretty sure at least one of them got an A. That was a thrill. That really got me excited about teaching. But yet I still remember what my parents were like, and I really didn't want to need that. So then I went off to the University of Michigan for my first go-round at graduate school. I found out while I was there that I could tutor athletes, and I thought this is great. It was a way to earn a little extra money, and they were a little bit starstruck because I was a U of M fan, and these are people you see on TV. Actually, one of them you still see on TV some. Dhani Jones was one of the students I worked with, and he had a career in the NFL and then did some commentaries for college football. I can't remember which station, but I didn't look to double check if one of my other ones was on Facebook here. But That was great. And what was really awesome about it was over time, I really began to enjoy the process of helping them learn. And I was really enjoying helping them understand these chemical concepts better. And I actually, in that process, developed a lot of the skills that and strategies that I still use today to help them understand those chemical concepts. I now still use with a lot of you guys to help you understand these chemical concepts. And so that process helped me mature as a teacher in many ways. Well, anyways, I developed a loyal following of football players, and that meant that I had a constant stream of football players coming to ask me to be their tutor. And I was always super proud of the fact that they would do quite well. And many of them did get A's, even in organic chemistry. Take that, Ohio State. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. And I didn't do their homework for them either. Oh, that was sensitive, wasn't it? But then I moved out of the pharmaceutical industry, and you think, now you get there, you're not going to do anything but teaching. And I did thoroughly enjoy being part of cutting edge research and developing new treatments for, guess what? Cancer. Treatments for HIV. And I even made rats lose weight. What a great thing, man. Skinniest rats in the business. I can say that safely because it never made it out of the market. It's never been in a human. So, it has side effect of causing depression. You should be happy your skin. Wait, this is recorded, isn't it? I'm in trouble. The best part of helping, the best part though was helping some of the staff who were in charge of our ordering of chemicals and our inventory of chemicals. Most of them, well, maybe all of them that I know, had no real background in chemistry. At best, maybe they had a course in high school in chemistry. And so they're in there working with chemicals, and they have really no idea what they do. They know what their job is, and they know how to do their job well, but they didn't understand the chemicals. And over time, I began helping them to understand what was going on as, they'd find a bottle in this inventory that had exploded, for example, true story, or some tert-butyllithium, a story that I tell way too many times, that happened to start hissing and start on fire. That's a fire you don't put out very well. I was willing to take time and help them understand the chemicals they were working with in a way that they could understand. And they really began to really enjoy that. And so then I found the staff would always come to me to ask me about something chemistry. Some chemical did this, what happened, why? And they really began to appreciate the fact that I was willing to explain things to them and help them understand. So, by the time I was ready to go back to graduate school, I was also very well aware of the fact that I didn't really want to remain in industry. Industry was a very transient career. You'd have to move around a lot. You might be on the East Coast one year and the West Coast the next, and your family would have to go with you. And sometimes there was no necessarily loyalty to somebody who worked there for 15 years, could find themselves the next day unemployed. And so for lifestyle reasons, but also, I think I began to realize, to come to grips with the fact that in my heart, my gift was really teaching. I had a way of explaining things to people in a way that they could understand. I knew for a fact there was no way I was going to teach high school because there was no way I wanted to deal with a younger version of myself. So college was a perfect fit. Maybe. Well, and I could do research. So that was where the passion then got directed. But I had some guiding principles. I wanted to be a good teacher. There were some teachers, at this point, I had some good teachers, and well, as many of you can probably relate to, I had some not so good teachers. Some teachers I learned a lot from, and some teachers I couldn't tell you what I learned from them, or other than perhaps a whole lot of frustration. Talk about nervous laughter there. Whoa, man. Somebody's feeling some nervousness. Anyway, I had also begun to hear the now familiar hymn of organic chemistry as a weed out course, typically from any doctor that I might happen to be talking to. And I was convinced then, and I still am, that the reason organic chemistry had become a weed out course because of the way that it was taught. It was taught in a way that made it inaccessible to too many people. It was presented in a way that forced excessive memorization, and that was not a successful approach. I also cringe at any time anyone invokes that there is so much memorization in an organic chemistry class. Let me let you all in on a secret. In all of the chemistry courses I've ever taken in my entire life, I've never once used flashcards. And look where I'm at. I didn't sit and memorize. And I'm convinced that is a better approach. And so that was a guiding principle. So how do I address all that? How do I go about changing the way organic chemistry is approached? Well, the first thing I focused on was what worked for me and what had not. First of all, I realized that I did not learn very well when the material was not presented in a logical way, in a logical, progressive way, in which a new concept built upon an older concept, and you found how everything connected. Chemistry was not a random collection of facts to be remembered. That was the first thing. The second thing is, use the dang chalkboard. Not a PowerPoint slides. Every time I ever had a professor using PowerPoint slides, the thing I would find is like staring at the PowerPoint slides and never writing anything down. And if they don't share the PowerPoint slides with you, what are you left with? A blank sheet of, or well, what was I left with? A blank sheet of paper and a blank mind as well. I gotta force students to write something down. There's something incredibly powerful about the tactile nature of taking notes, writing it down, connecting to it. The lecture cannot be strictly a bunch of conceptual ponderings. I do struggle sometimes that I don't write enough words down on the whiteboard chalkboard, and I still work on that, trying to get better. Third thing was to have energy and enthusiasm. Nothing puts you to sleep faster than a boring prof. At one point, when I started teaching, I asked some of my family, what are some things that you would suggest I should do to be a really effective professor? And that was confirmed and affirmed by one of my sister-in-laws. I won't have you comment. There's no Likert scale. On a scale of 1 to 10, did Dr. Troyer do well in this third category of energy and enthusiasm? Now, number 4, don't be afraid to admit what you don't know. My best teacher in high school was my chemistry teacher. Okay, that might be a little bit biased, but the thing about my chemistry teacher in high school was he was not trained in chemistry to start with. That was not his natural strength. And when he taught, it was really early in his career. And we went very slow. I didn't cover half the stuff that some of you guys did coming into college. Let's go back. I took chemistry, physics, and calculus my first year. And I got all A's and a couple of B's. By the way, when I applied to graduate school, you have to put down what your GPAs and your major. The last time I remember, I had a GPA in a chemistry major of about 3.9, something like that, and mostly A's throughout that, all right? That's with somebody, I never took AP chemistry. We didn't cover all the stuff that many of you learned in organic chemistry, or learned in AP chemistry, high school chemistry. But what I did realize is that through redundancy and repeating things, going slowly through the material and really emphasizing the basics, I came out of high school doing stoichiometry better than half the people that I was in college with. That was the one thing I was really confident about. I had that core. You know how easy it is to build upon that? Well, at least in my mind, it was apparently really easy. That became a guiding principle for me. I think it also showed me that high school teacher was willing to admit it wasn't a strength. He had to work at it. And I wanted to always approach chemistry with that level of humility so that I learn as I taught, rather than just regurgitate what I'd always seen other people do. There were some surprises along the way. At IU, I had a conversation with a student who was struggling in the honors organic chemistry class. And I was the TA in that class, not the prof, by the way, just the TA. So I don't take any blame for how hard the class was. She was struggling with it, and it was a very difficult class. And at one point I had this conversation. I asked her why she was taking the harder version. If it was going to be so difficult and so, an existential crisis of, destroying your mental health, why do it? And she told me that the regular version of organic chemistry at IU, still is, was taught in a way that the professor would tell you exactly the exact question that would be on the exam. They would literally write the question that was going to be on the exam on the board, point to it, and said, this will be on the test. And she felt like she could go into that test there without any preparation, without any studying, and get an A, and walk out and feel like she hadn't learned a thing. She wanted to challenge herself. And so she was struggling because she wanted to challenge herself. She wanted to do well. Note to self, you need to challenge your students so that they realize their full potential. The other half of that struggle was that the honor version was so hard, the class average on an exam might be like 60%. You know how incredibly hard it was to convince her that she was doing well, better than she thought, when all she could remember was that 60% on the exam, that with a curve might have been an A? Earning an A for a score of 60% did not do anything positive for the student's self-confidence. All they could see was that they barely understood half of the material that they thought they should have known for that test. Note to self, make a test that's reasonable. We don't need to argue about that one, but anyways, it was a guiding principle. Then at Vanderbilt, I was asked to TA, to be a TA that did demos. And I was kind of offended. They were going to waste my skills as a classroom instructor, a TA, and they got like across the board perfect 5s out of 5s, and with teaching evaluations, we got teaching evaluations as TAs. I was a little offended. So I said, screw this, I'm just going to have fun with it. I injected a little humor into it. My demos were performed to rock music or parodies of popular TV shows. Ones that I can't mention now because none of you know them. They were done before you were born or something like that. I'm that old now. But the students loved it. I became known on campus as Tim the Stunt TA. I know I hadn't revealed my true identity here with you guys before. My celebrity actually extended to my first job in West Virginia. I was just about ready to start before the beginning of the school year. I'd gone into a Lowe's, and this guy that was checking me out in Lowe's says, hey, aren't you that stunt TA? I kid you not. And then he asked me for his autograph. It looked like a receipt, but we know what he really wanted. You would have thought that all my antics doing those demos would have probably gotten me in trouble with the other faculty. Yet, in fact, it did the opposite. Who I was warned was going to be my toughest critic was the one that pulled me aside and said, I've been looking for someone like you all along, and I choose you. Still gets me. Asked me to then be what was at that point kind of novel, and I think there are more programs like this around the country, but she asked me to be a teaching mentor. She wanted to mentor me in teaching. So I got to be mentored in the general chemistry class, about 200 students in a lecture hall at Vanderbilt University. That was my first training. It also led to a teaching certificate, which helped me get some of my first jobs. Note to self, be yourself. Being authentic is actually a good thing. Also at Vanderbilt, there was this one time I passed a student in the hallway, and they were visibly upset. It was a student I had interacted with in a variety of different classes. I can't remember exactly how, but they were distraught. So I said, hey, what's going on? It's the classic other hymn. I think I just failed my test. And you can see in that moment the weight, as I've often seen, it's not the first time and the last time that I saw that, but you can see the weight of the world coming down upon her and her dreams that seemed to implode around her. Now, at that point, I was young and naive, and I tried feebly to reassure her that it really can't be that bad. It'll be fine. You know, that 60% is really an A. And nothing I could say would work. She burst into tears. Unable to know how to handle the situation, I took 2 steps away towards leaving, uncertain that I could say anything beneficial at that time, anything that was going to matter. I took 2 steps, and then I turned around and gave her a hug and told her that I believed in her. I never saw her again until we both went through commencement. She to get her bachelor's degree, me to get my doctorate. I don't know what actually happened to that particular student, but I'm pretty sure that she's gone on to do some very big things. There's been a few other times where it was the right time to give somebody a hug and tell them I believe in them. One of them right now is on Facebook. And they're a doctor. That one I can tell you for sure. I've learned the power of a hug. It's tough because I don't want to cross any lines, and I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. But there is something more genuine about encouragement if you can back it up with a hug. And I started my career with these basic principles in place. It perhaps helped that as a kid I had found that making people laugh felt really good. I don't know, first, second grade, and everybody laughed at me and think, not with me. I had a dime for every time I've heard that one. Literally, I mean, really rich. You have no idea. But it felt really good. I actually thought about making comedy as a career. True story. It didn't work out, obviously, on here, right? Yeah. And you're the unwilling victims of that now. But I got really involved in the theater productions in high school and in college, and however, I learned very quickly I could not play a single serious role in a play. On top of that, they kept typecasting me as some little kid or a scientist. But the idea of getting into character and having proper timing, I found out applied really well to the classroom as well. Remember when I talked about that a boring prof was the worst one, you're just going to fall asleep in a hurry. So it's not just the energy and the enthusiasm, it's the interjection of humor, it's the ability to have the right and proper timing, know when to kind of refrain and hold in the focus and bring it all together. So when I got into the classroom, I became some sort of an alter ego of sorts, breaking up that lecture with humor, at least I thought so. Students have kept notebooks of stupid things I say and then turned them to put them on t-shirts. That's right, here it is, folks. That's only one of the t-shirts that's been made. I don't know what else. The stupid things I've said have got made into it. I think one of the students made it into a book. Clearly not a New York Times bestseller, but oh well. I can still tease my daughter about my 101 bad dad jokes. Yeah, can't even get it out right. I used to try to use as many relevant pop culture references as I possibly could as a scientist nerd, the typecast in that category. Right? For example, at times, I haven't used it here at Denison, but I was Dr. Eagle Doofenshmirtz because
No.
yes. You asked for promise. You're mad that I didn't do that. Yeah. That was back when my kids were watching a lot of Phineas and Ferb. And in fact, one year, I think the students figured out it was my birthday and they came with cupcakes that had Phineas and Ferb people on it. It's priceless. I love that one to death. I did bad musical parodies of Adele and Meghan Trainor. Yeah, it's still all about that bass, right? And then there was that one Amish Gaga video too. Students also introduced me to the Big Bang Theory, and so at times I got a little Sheldon. Things you guys get me to do. It's your fault, it's not me. And now hopefully no one's forgot about spider pigs in reference to what Bart Simpson, of course, it's on the back of the shirt, how could you forget? Something seems to be popping off a lot on me, so I'm bringing that one there. I also developed a Nerf gun battle to describe the chemical concept. I created my own cult, which included and involved the intermediate carbocation. You think I was going to let you out of here without that? Not going to happen. And I even tried to feebly attempt to dress up like an intermediate carbocation and maybe take a pie to the face. That one wasn't recorded on video either, was it? I leave a legacy in video that might get me in trouble someday, maybe. But it was all fun. It was the best time. I had so much fun doing all of that. And I would also say that during graduate school, I happened on a YouTube video, some older professor, he's great, bald, and decided to try to do a rap, chemistry rap in his chemistry class. And he's like trying to make his pants go low and put the hat on backwards. And then his rap was like terrible. No, I'm not going to rap because I know that I can't do that. I'll stick to Dr. Evil Doofenshmirtz and Sheldon. Because I can handle that one. And I can handle Lady Gaga. But not right now. That YouTube video of that professor making an absolute terrible mistake of a YouTube video. I made it my mission that I could do better than that. And I'd like to think that perhaps, maybe just a little bit, I was maybe a little bit better than him. I also realized that there was no need to create an unhealthy barrier between the professor and the student. I didn't need anyone to call me doctor or professor. I knew what title I had earned. I knew what degree I had earned. I didn't need people bowing down and bestowing honor upon me in any way. I've lectured in Keith Kermit t-shirts. I even lectured with Kermit ears from Hollywood Studios and Disney World. Came back with Kermit ears. I lectured in Kermit ears. Yeah. I wanted to be relatable. I wanted to be approachable. I wanted to be an equal partner in learning and not just a dictatorial deliverer of intellectual torture. I quickly learned that there were many barriers to learning, but one of the most prominent was insecurity and a lack of confidence that was exasperated in the form of test anxiety. No one has to admit anything today. There's a few here across 3 different institutions that probably can relate to that statement. I always knew and firmly believed that the student was always capable. And that it was my job to help them realize their full potential. I began to assert that 60 to 70% of my job was to be a cheerleader. As I learned from my time at IU, the solution was not to make the class overly easy. So I had to balance being firm without being too demanding, yet while bringing an enthusiastic praise, bringing all the enthusiastic praise that I could ever exist in. Some of my colleagues might have thought that I was maybe a little bit unbearingly loud, and I'm still working on finding new ways to correct yet encourage. I would like to pause at this moment and thank all of the coffee brewers and roasters from a variety of places in West Virginia, Indiana, and Ohio for the millions of gallons of coffee I've consumed over the past 14 years, and also my friend Twizzlers. I credit both for allowing me to operate with a high level of energy and enthusiasm for so long. And in fact, tonight is sponsored by a frozen cocoa mint mocha from River Road Coffee House. I now, at the close of my career, am developing a theory that in this world there are teachers and there are instructors. An instructor might be eloquent. They might be interesting. They might be very knowledgeable. They're effective in delivering information in a well-crafted lecture and other activities. But a teacher, on the other hand, seeks to ensure that a student actually understands all that was in that lecture. Well, my methods may be unconventional. I can look back on the past 14 years, and I can say that my students have learned and learned a lot. I can look around this room, and for those that are joining virtually on Facebook and on Zoom here, and I see a lot of former students that have gone on to great success, standardized professional exams, careers in medicine, pharmacy, dentistry, veterinary, industry, physical therapy, nutrition, and even more. In recent years, I've enjoyed putting the names of all the students who have done research with me on my acknowledgement slides in any talk that I give. That slide is now filled up with names that there's so many that's in a small font you can barely read it. But I look at that slide with great pride. As I think of their careers, I can go through each name and tell you where they've gone and what they've gone on. I would also like to point out that in 14 years of teaching, to the best of my knowledge, less than 5% of the students who start in one of my classes ends up dropping one of my classes. In other words, my retention rate is quite high. I don't know if that is something that is common. I would also like to publicly thank Dr. Sunshine Silver at North Park University in Chicago for stressing in a phone interview how impressive it was that my students, on average, get 80%, sometimes even over 85%, on my exams over the past 8 to 10 years, even in organic chemistry. And I haven't had a single student ever come up to me and tell me that my exam was too easy. I don't know that I've reached that perfection that I would desire, but I'm incredibly proud of all the hard work any student has ever put into my class to both stick it out and give me an 80% average on an exam. That's a lot of you, not a lot of me. With all the success, you might wonder why I'm stepping away from a career that I love and that I do well in. And I don't know that I can accurately claim that it is fully my choice, but rather it is the right path for me at this time. I dreamed of a long 30 to 40 year career at the same school, teaching the children of former students. Life does come with some challenges and some obstacles. Mine is no different. I've always struggled to prove to others that I'm worthy of their investment. It's been a rough 5 years of applying to a lot of jobs and having a lot of people not even acknowledge your application. I think I deserve better than that. I'm not saying everybody ought to give me a job, but how I can't rise to the top 10 of your applicant pool, I can't fathom it. My first job actually came by somewhat of a miracle after a long search. I got multiple offers in that first time around. None of them were all that great. You know, sometimes there were smaller schools struggling financially. The pay wasn't all that great. And the location I wasn't really sure I wanted to be in. Some schools looked a little stodgy to me. They had this people walking around in teaching in academic regalia. Because, you know, the cap and gown, you taught in that. You guys get that that's not really, that wasn't my thing. What was strange is that I initially had been passed over by West Virginia Wesleyan College. But their first choices didn't accept the position. So they had reopened it as a visiting position. And at that point, I wasn't all that excited about the offers that I had. What the heck? Let's check it out. I went there, interviewed for a visiting position. No sooner had I got home than they offered me the tenure track position. Some have had their doubts about me, but the first 4 years went really well. And I think I could say in hindsight, if I stayed there, I might have had that 30 to 40-year career. Perhaps I got a little overconfident. I'll own that one. When I decided to accept a different position at Huntington University in Huntington, Indiana. Because after 5 years there, I was denied tenure and sent packing. And on top of that, they kind of said that it was because of teaching ineffectiveness. There's a few students on here that are from Huntington University, and they've gone on, some of them are now doctors and pharmacists and so on. They weren't real happy about that decision, by the way, I'll just say that. That one stung. Tell me that I wasn't an effective teacher. I actually knew it had nothing to do with that. But then on top of that, then they backed it up by saying they would never write me a letter of recommendation. Never asked for a letter of recommendation from them. That has, in the end, made many of the attempts for finding a different tenure track position nearly impossible. Rejection over the last 5 years has become routine and normalized. I rarely got much of an acknowledgement, let alone the first phone interview. I've only had 3 campus interviews out of something like 30 to 40 applications for tenure track positions, 2 which came in this last year, only 1 that's turned into an offer. The last 4 years here at Denison, let me just say, have been absolutely fantastic. But there's little hope for it becoming a tenure track position. The question becomes, it is a question that I agonize over. It's the question I agonize over the most. I think there's a combination of factors that revolve around the fact that the business of higher ed is not ready for someone like me. I don't know that being humble and honest with my weaknesses is always appreciated. The expectation seems to be most of the time that you need to be arrogant and assertive. Tell people how great you are. Show them how great you are. I could care less. Leave me alone. Let me teach. Let's do research. That's it. That doesn't always fit. I also don't fit the mold. I don't dress the part. I'm here in a stinking t-shirt. I'm supposed to be in a suit and tie, right? I don't know. I don't look the part. I don't act the part. I don't demand the title. I can't tell you how many people, how many colleagues are kind of upset that I don't ask you to call me doctor or professor, because then they think that then you get the idea you don't have to call them doctor or professor. But I didn't say that. I don't operate in the conventional way that is deemed respectable or commensurate with the position of being a chemistry professor. I don't lecture from PowerPoint. I don't use multiple choice questions. I don't make a question worth 5 to 10 points unless there is a clear way that they can earn partial credit. I don't give a written lab exam. I use case study approaches. I use programmed inquiry. I don't favor luck. I have unlimited, open, flexible office hours. I might operate on 2 equal footing with my students. I'm not aloof enough. At one point, a colleague at Huntington University acknowledged that my teaching evaluations were exceptionally high in organic chemistry. In fact, out of like 15 respondents, every last one of them had given me a 5 out of 5. And also was usually close to that in all the other upper level courses that I taught. But yet that same colleague turned around and had me characterized as not an effective teacher based on, wait for it, teaching evaluations. I don't know which ones they were looking at. From one day to the next, it's something different. It still leaves my head spinning with confusion. And the best I can attribute to this cognitive dissonance is pure jealousy. Some people are a little upset my evaluations were too high compared to theirs. Yet at the end of the day, I've never quit. I've always kept striving to do my best. I used to say that if I was teaching just for tenure, I was teaching for the wrong reasons. And my impression has been that most people will just play nice, make the class super easy, everyone gets an A, just to get tenure, and then after that they change. Okay, good, no one laughed, but there was a nervous tension there that I know. You don't have to say anything, I got you. Again, I chose to be authentic. I'm not going to pretend to be one thing just to get tenure. I'm going to be who I am. You take it or leave it. I choose to be myself. It's kind of like in high school when I realized I couldn't possibly appease all the cool kids. So instead of trying to be one of the cool kids, I went out and intentionally tried to redefine myself because I was going to be the one who then set the standard for what was cool. I actually, back in those days, we like wearing high tops. So I one-upped it. I took my high tops untied, right? So I did one-up that. I would tie knots in the end of my shoelace and then take my the tongue of the shoe, wrap it over and tuck it under the shoelaces. Still the only one who did it, but I don't care because I was setting a trend. I didn't need to be like other people to be cool. And I've had that same mentality as a teacher. I don't need to act like everybody else just to be a good teacher. I've never taught for security. I've never taught for my own ego. And guess what? I've never in my entire career ever won any type of teaching award. And it really doesn't matter because I would not change how I approach teaching, and it is unnecessary to validate the success of my students. The world may try to suggest that I have failed. I didn't achieve my dream. I didn't win awards. I didn't get things named after me. But look around here, and those of you that are here connected virtually. And I know I can look at each one of you, and I know I've made a difference. At best, I helped you achieve success. At worst, I didn't prevent you from achieving success. I didn't get in your way. I can only look back and be proud of what has been accomplished in only 14 years, rather than bemoan what it might have been if it had been 30. And here you all are. And none of you have to be. I know that. I didn't expect anybody to show up for my last lecture. I was actually really nervous, struggled a lot. Like, what am I going to say? Do I really have anything important to share with any of you? Despite my poor decisions and the challenges and the obstacles created by others, and despite that this is not what I dreamed of, I can say with confidence, it has still been the most fantastic journey. For those of you that are here right now at Denison, if I had played it safe and assimilated someone else's standards, I never would have gotten to meet any one of you. I would have never had the pleasure of being your professor. For all of you that are here that have been a student at Huntington University, I would have never had the pleasure of meeting any of you if I'd never chosen to leave West Virginia Wesleyan College. And for all of my students here on Facebook and Zoom and here in person, wherever you may be now, if I hadn't taken this crazy winding path, I would have never had the pleasure of watching you become amazing people. The amazing people you are, and seeing you become successful, each in your own chosen careers. It's been a crazy journey filled with pain and some frustration, but yet it has all been absolutely worth it. And so, I closed my career as a professor. Far shorter than I ever wanted it to be. And I regret the students that I maybe could have helped in the future. but of the paths that extend before me at this moment. I choose with my family. With my family. I choose happiness. And I choose mental stability. I don't want to prove myself to anybody anymore. I don't want to try to live up to anybody's standards, and I'm tired of rejection. I choose not to commute for 3.5 hours one way. It's been a few times when I've gotten a little too sleepy behind the wheel. And I am a man that doesn't like science, doesn't like math, but I know statistical averages. You know, that weighs on you on a 3.5 hour drive. Especially with some of the idiots around Columbus, my goodness. You know what I'm talking about now, you know? And I choose to be a teacher and teach in the way that I'm convinced should be the path. I choose to be a teacher and teach the way that I'm convinced teaching should be done. And that happens to be a path that is divergent from that of higher ed. If I make a difference in how organic chemistry, it won't be from within the business of higher ed. I no longer believe that reform can happen internally. I just don't think the system will allow it. So I've chosen my path. Let me leave you with this one final parting wisdom. Do not fear the curves and the obstacles in your path. Embrace them, overcome them, keep being you, don't assimilate, don't accept defeat, and know that no matter where the path may take you, it is a good path, and it's your path. So go, find your path, and choose your path, and do not simply accept the path that is forced upon you or chosen for you by others. And may I say in conclusion, that I am most profoundly grateful that our paths have had the chance to cross. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to have some space, to have this time, to do my best to properly express just how grateful I am to have been over these past 14 years, all of your teachers. The classroom, even on the worst days, became my sanctuary. Each and every one of you, at times, has been my inspiration. It kept me going when I really wanted to give up. So thank you. Thank you. Go and do well. And I wish you good night, and unfortunately, goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope it was perfect time.
It was.
Yeah, let's take a picture. I'm doing it. You see yourself on the. Huh? Thank you. You have your phone? Or do you want to take it on mine? Or.
No.
Maybe. Oh, whatever, whatever. It's crazy because it's just a small sum. Hundreds of kids.
Trying to hug you? Insane.
There were tickets, I swear.
I hope. See you.
Well, one of my research.
Oh, wow. Big ass.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Still
I also do. I gotta get a line. My room. Office. I'll still be around for a while. Probably be up to this.
Okay, I just want to make sure this is not the last one.
Yeah. For sure.
No,
So what do you think? I think that's over.
No, I could be. If I were, sorry. I'm stupid.
Do I know you?
No. I just a friend.
Oh, okay.
He's one of my friends. I
Okay.
met the first
You
day.
recruited people.
Yeah, I brought my roommate as well.
All right. Well, nice to meet you.
Scary.
Good things.
Okay, okay.
All good things.
Well, good. good. I'm gonna actually check, there's a whole bunch of comments over here
Yeah, check it.
on Zoom and everything, so. You guys are way too kind, so thank you so much.
Hair grow out really fast. Remember you shaved like your head like.
No, in the middle. I think we're gonna go. My
All
hair
right,
grows
well,
well.
Love you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Char.
Thank you all you guys on Zoom for joining. Your comments are way too kind. Of course, Kaylee, Megan, and Tori, I think you've been around me way too much, so thank you so much, guys. Appreciate you being here. I think Facebook has got all kinds of long comments here. I think I'll be fine. I'm just kind of reading all the comments here that people are making on Facebook and stuff. A lot of memories. Brian Tootin and Elizabeth Leach and Denise. Took me a while to get through all this. Take up there. Michelle. Yeah, we'll see you guys. See everyone. Thanks for joining today. Guess we're signing out. Thanks everybody for joining. See you later.